Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, May 25th, 2017. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Steve Wilkes and Casey Letellier join me to evaluate my hop timing experiment. What difference does it make to add a single hop addition at 60 minutes, 30 minutes, or flameout? If you're new to home brewing or would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. And don't forget to get a copy of our Brewer's Logbook. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. You can find me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, go to basicbrewing.com, look on the right-hand side of the page, click on our Amazon ad, and it won't cost you any extra. You won't notice any difference, but you'll be helping us to bring you this show. We greatly, greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're on the BlackBerry Podcast Directory. We're on the Stitcher app. We're on Google Play Music. And we're on the iHeartRadio app, too. And finally, if you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our virtual guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support. And thanks to everybody who's done so already. This is the last audio show before the June break. Every June, we take a break from posting audio episodes to do family stuff and to go to HomebrewCon. This time, of course, it's in Minneapolis. I'm greatly looking forward to going up there. I do plan to post a video episode this Friday. In this episode of Basic Brewing Video, Steve shows off his mead made with sweet sorghum syrup. Man, that was tasty. And that was Steve's response to my sweet sorghum syrup challenge. I saw some fun news on Twitter last night. Mad fermentationist Mike Tonsmeyer announced he's teaming up with Scott Janish to start a brewery in Maryland. It's going to be called Sapwood Cellars. And Mike says they're going to be brewing hoppy ales and barrel-aged oddities. It's very exciting. You can check out Mike's Mad Fermentationist blog for more details on that. Looking forward to hearing more. Let's take a look into the mailbox, shall we? Stephen, formerly of Charlotte and now in Iowa, writes about kombucha after hearing Phil Nagash and me talking about it. Stephen says, I myself have been making kombucha for the past 4 years or so on a weekly basis, and one thing I don't think you touched on in your podcast is the alcohol produced in homemade kombucha, and that kids and pregnant women probably shouldn't drink homemade kombucha without some different brewing strategies. Stephen says a store-bought has to be under 0.5% of alcohol, so he thinks it's much less risk there. Stephen says, I know when I make kombucha, I like mine a little sweet and a little fizzy, but when it's like that and not completely still, the alcohol content is 1 to 3% per hydrometer readings. For homebrewers that want to make a less than 0.5% alcohol homebrewed kombucha, I would suggest that they let the kombucha ferment until very acidic and still, so the alcohol that is produced by the yeast is metabolized by the gluconacidobacter, the souring bacteria in kombucha, which converts ethanol to acetic and gluconic acid, as well as produces cellulose, which is what the SCOBY is made of. Stephen says, dilute with unsweetened tea to a 50-50 concentration, bottle or keg, just like we would homebrewed beer. So there you go. If you're concerned about the alcohol content of your kombucha, there are some tips from Stephen. Yeah, we didn't really talk about that. Phil and I really didn't talk about it in the show. I'm on my third batch of kombucha now, and I've been playing with dry hopping. My first attempt, I used an ounce of Chinook pellets in around half a gallon, and it tasted great, but it was a mess. Lots of gunk got into the bottle. So the second round, I tried a bit less of some Centennial and filtered the kombucha as it was going into the bottle by pouring it through a hop bag. I lined a funnel with the hop bags, and that caught most of the stuff, and it looks a lot better, but it doesn't taste as good. So I bought some more hops to play with at Steve's Brew Shop yesterday, and I hope to refine my process and share the results with you in future episodes. I also finally bought a pH meter, and if I'm using it correctly, my latest finished batch of kombucha had a pH of 3.0. Pretty tart, but that's how I like it. I don't like kombucha that's too sweet. So there you go. I also got a note on kombucha from Paul in Melbourne, Australia. Paul says, my wife and I used to buy kombucha at our local farmer's market, and it was tasty, but at $8 odd for a 700 milliliter bottle, it wasn't cheap, and we were drinking a fair bit of it. Then I thought, you know what, there's a Basic Brewing video episode about making your own, so we watched that, and we've been making it ever since, for a teeny fraction of the market price, too. Paul says, in our house now, it's pretty much a staple. We've added all sorts of berries, ginger, mint, basil, jalapeno peppers, mushrooms. Heck, sometimes we even drink it plain. When it's so easy and cheap to make, there's no reason not to experiment. Sounds tasty. I don't know the jalapeno peppers with a really tart kombucha. Paul says his next step is to try dry hopping as well. Well, this weekend I got to go to the grand opening of the new location of our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. And for more details, let's go to our man in the field, me. Desiree, where are we?
We are at the grand opening of our homebrew store.
And it's brand new. You've moved in. Was it an ordeal?
It was probably one of the most stressful times that I've ever had. The first time that we moved to a new location, it was like 4 doors down, and so we did it in one day. We had to be closed for 3 days, and then it took us a good, couple weeks to figure out where everything really should be, because my initial layout, no. My daughter overrode me often. No, it's not going there. So we had to get all that figured out, and then we got to start focusing on the taproom area. So it's not finished yet, but at least we have a bar now to serve from. So.
Yeah, and that's the big difference is that you guys you were a winery before. You made wine and sold it. You weren't able to serve it in the old space. Now you are a brewery as well as a winery, and you now have a tap room in addition to the retail space that you can actually serve the beer. Now, are you going to be concentrating on like kits and recipes that you sell, or how's that going to work?
Well, we plan on having 6 taps to start with. Initially, it's going to all be low point beer until we get the zoning changed. Right now, this place isn't zoned to allow a microbrewery. So 6 months or so, we'll be selling full-strength beer, but until then, it's going to be low point. We're going to have 6 taps. Our plan is for 3 of those taps to always be one of our kits, so that people can get an idea of what our kits taste like. And then the other 3 taps, we're just going to let our guys and gal make whatever the heck they want so that they're happy.
Now, is this the first step into making a high-gravity production brewery and canning and bottling and distribution and all that stuff?
No. No, honestly, this seems to, we think this complements the store really well. We really don't have any desire to distribute. We're growler fills, pints, sell pints on location, and maybe a crowler. We eventually have a crowler one day, so people can at least have, take a crowler home. But right now it's growlers and pints.
And the electric brewing systems are still going to be made here. You've got a setup for Dave to put all those together?
Yeah, he got to kind of really design his new workspace. Before it was kind of hodgepodge to put together, so he's a lot more efficient now. He's able to put them together a lot faster now. And we get to showcase them because that's where we're brewing we brewed our first 1-barrel batch last Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and using our controllers, so it went very smoothly. We're very excited.
Awesome. Well, if you're in Tulsa, what's the address?
We are 6808 South Memorial in the Village Shopping Center between Sun and Ski Sports and Hard Knocks.
There you go. And as usual, go to highgravitybrew.com. That's High Gravity Brew, family owned and operated, highgravitybrew.com. Thanks, Desiree.
Thank you.
Such a cool new store and a fun tap room as well. There was a ton of folks there. And there was a band and there was a taco truck. And Desiree put me to work serving up samples at the bar, and I was very busy. But I had a lot of fun. Got to talk to some people who listened to the podcast and got to meet some new folks. And after it was all over, I picked up a Saison ingredient kit, which I brewed the following day. And it's here in the studio with me because the studio is a little warmer than the rest of the house. So a while back, Chris Colby and I talked on the show about strategies for moving your hop additions around to tweak your beers. And Chris seemed to question the value of adding hops in the middle of the boil, saying that you don't get the best bittering value and you lose a lot of the flavor and aroma, so why bother? Of course, I'm paraphrasing there. So I designed an experiment, and I asked Steve Wilkes of Steve's Brew Shop and Casey Letellier, currently of West Mountain Brewing, and soon to be the owner of Ivory Bill Brewing Company in Siloam Springs, to help me evaluate it. And if you stay tuned after the interview, I'll let you know what a group at High Gravity's grand opening thought about it as well. Well, Steve Wilkes, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks, James. It's a pleasure to be on your shady deck at the moment.
It's shady, literally, not in any kind of moral...
Well, don't put words in my mouth.
Casey Letellier, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you. It is very nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're here at the house again. Last time you were here, we were brewing beer on this very spot, and you were skimming the cold break or the hot break. So
That's right.
I have to tease you. We are here to do what I thought was going to be an easy experiment to evaluate. We are considering the timing of hop additions, and let me just go through the details of the experiment, and then we can talk about how we sampled it and go from there. This is essentially a 3-quart batch, three 3-quart batches. I started each of these batches with 5 quarts of water, and when the water came up to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, I added 1 pound of pale ale dry malt extract. And then I brought it up to the boil, and that's where the experiment diverges, because in one batch, at the 60-minute mark, I added 1/3 of an ounce of Cascade at 8.4% alpha acid and boiled that for an hour, and then chilled in an ice bath. And each of these took 12 minutes to chill down to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And I apologize for the metric people. I forgot to do the metric equivalents. The second batch, I did a 30-minute addition. So anyway, I brought it up to a boil, added no hops until the 30-minute mark, finished that boil, chilled it the same way, the same time, same temperature. Then the third batch, I only added hops, the same amount of hops, at flameout. So 1/3 of an ounce of hops into each one. And then after chilling, I added 3 grams of Safale USO5 to each jug, to each fermenter jug. And then after, I brewed this on April 23rd, bottled on May 4th, and I added 5 of those little sugar priming tablets in each bottle, and there were 7 bottles of each of the experiments. So that is the experiment. Did I leave anything out? Is it fairly straightforward, plain? So what I did was I labeled as I normally do. I wrote the times on the bottle caps, and then before Steve and Casey came, I took an identical piece of masking tape, or actually duct tape, and put it on the top of each bottle so that we didn't know.
Right.
We were blind at that point. And so I labeled we randomly picked the bottles to assign the numbers 1, 2, and 3 to. So we poured the samples out in our glasses, our cups, and then we sampled. And I thought it was going to be just a walk in the park to figure out which was which, but it was more difficult than I thought.
Yes, it was more difficult than I thought as well. I thought for sure it would be very easy to just go, oh, boom, boom, boom. I will say that I feel fairly confident of which one is the flameout brew. Of course, I'll probably be dead wrong, but I think I know that one. The other two are trickier. The 30-minute and 60-minute editions are tricky, but I have my thoughts.
Yeah. See, I think I'm confident that I know the 60-minute edition, and I'm kind of wishy-washy on the other two.
It was surprising to see that they were all good beers. Like I kind of thought.
Thanks a lot, Casey.
No, no, don't take it that way. Just thinking that when you are doing something that is like kind of out of conventional wisdom, like when would you ever make a pale ale and only add hops at flameout or only add 60 minutes? And they're all good. I would all happily like drink a pint of any of these, even though they're all like very unconventional.
Yeah, they're not bad. And they were carbonated well, which I was relieved. I've been having mixed results with the little priming sugar tablets recently on different batches for some reason. But in the beginning, carbonation adds a bite. It adds a bitterness to it. And so in the beginning, it was more difficult for me to determine my feelings about which one was which. But as the beer warmed up and as the carbonation dropped, I became a little bit more confident. We'll see how that goes. So who wants to go first? Does it either?
Ow!
Steve, you're bold and courageous person, afraid of nothing.
Well, I'll try. I'll go. Right. I think number 1 is the flameout beer. Okay. I think number 3 is the 30-minute edition beer, and I think number 2 is the 60-minute edition beer. And I say that because number 1 seems to be the thinnest and least hopped in my palate by far. Number 2 is it has the biggest hop bite between the two to me. So that's what I'm going with. It just seems like it's got a little bit. It's a little more of that back of the throat hop bite. That's my palate.
So say it again. I'm going to write this down. So you say number 1
is flameout.
Is the flameout. Mm-hmm. Number 2
is 60-minute.
Is the 60. And number 3 is the 30.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. All right.
But I do want to say the caveat that the 30 and 60 are really hard to tell apart to me. There's not a lot of difference, but that's the difference I think I taste.
Okay. Casey?
I think I'm on the same page. I think you're right. So that's not necessarily good for show, like having a dramatic. I hope you disagree with this, James. It'll be more fun, just for the sake of making it exciting. But I do feel like 1 has really nice bright aromatics, and then it fades away. It's like there's no bitterness in the finish at all. 3, I get a little bit of aromatics and some bitterness in the finish. 2, I feel like all I smell is malt, but then there's a pretty significant hop bite in the finish. So that's my guess as well.
Well, I'm going to be boring and go with you guys. I was completely confident of 2. And we don't know. We could be we could be all wrong.
We all go down together.
Hang together or hang separately.
Number 2, just the bitterness bite was right there. I mean, it was just right there on your tongue. And then I went back and forth on 1 and 3, on, because I was going by bitterness level, and back in the beginning when they were all three had the same level of carbonation, it was really hard for me to figure out which had the bigger bite. But then I settled on, as the beers warmed up and as the carbonation came out, I said number 1 was the flameout, number 2 was the 60, and number 3 was the 30. So, do you guys, you take number 1, Steve. You take number 2 there, Casey. Take off the tape, and we'll see. Reveal. Number 1 is it stuck on so? Watch it be stuck on so bad we can't.
Flame out.
Flame out. Number 1 was the flame out. Okay, so far we're 1 for 1.
And number 2 is 60.
Yeah, hey, we did it!
All right.
Oh, woo!
So
Man.
It really kind of wasn't that hard. Meaning, we all three absolutely identified it, though there was a moment of hesitation.
Yeah. Well, and it took time. It wasn't. To me, the 60-minute edition, like I said, was right in your face. It was just like, oh, this is the most bitter and bright. But then the I vacillated between the 1 and the 3. Now, did you guys think the 1 and the 3 were as close as I'm thinking? I mean, this is all hard to.
It was a little bit like, in some ways, I actually felt like it was harder to tell between the 30 and the 60 edition, and that like the Flameout edition just had no bitterness whatsoever. And the 30 and 60 both had some level of bitterness, and so then it was kind of going back in and trying to sort of like, oh no, there's more aromatic quality to this one, so I think that's the 30. Those were the 2 that were hard for me.
Yeah, that exactly what he said, except that I wasn't keying on the aromatics with any of this. I was keying on the level of bitterness perceived. So, well, I did do the bouquet test where I smelled them and tried to do a somewhat critical analysis of that. Nonetheless, for me, it was all about which one just seems more bitter. And that was the order that I came up with.
Now, in the fermenter, it was, and this may not have been a real fair test of the head retention and the foam level, because we're using these little plastic cups, and I was pouring sort of gently to measure them out well. But in the fermenter, there was a dramatic difference in the amount of foam that came up on the top of the fermenting beer and how long it stuck around. And it was the beer that had the hops in the boil longer. The foam was bigger and it stayed longer. And I posted a picture on Twitter and I think Facebook as well to demonstrate that. So, we may want to play with, like pouring full pints or something later, or but that may be another factor that has something to do with the amount of time that those hops stay in the boil and the amount of alpha acids that are isomerized. I want to look at the. I've got my little Brew Math app pulled up on my phone, and I've entered in the particulars of the recipe into the bitterness calculator. This will be fun. The 60-minute edition, according to Brew Math, using the Tenseth calculation formula, has a predicted IBU of 63. Daniels, 66. Rager, 85. And Garrett's, 55. So we go from 63 to 66 to 85 to 55. Now, if we bring it down to 30 minutes, Tenseth is 48, Daniels is 52, Rager is 47, and Garrett's is 30. So the first 3 were kind of close together, and I'm assuming that if we bring it down to 0 minutes, it's going to be 0 IBUs for all of them. Yeah, they're all saying 0 IBUs for that. So, to climb on my ever-present, we need a better hop IBU calculation formula. those are pretty dramatic differences.
They're incredibly dramatic differences, and tasting them, I doubt all of those numbers. Like none of these come across as a particularly bitter beer. Like if I had to guess, I would say even on the 60-minute, I would guess 35-40. It doesn't come across as a bitter beer. So I don't know.
It's certainly not 85 or whatever the...
No, absolutely not. I mean, 85 is a unabashedly, like, face puncher. That's a bitter beer. And this isn't.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I don't know. I wonder about recipe formulation. In other words, 30 IBUs in one beer is perceived to be more or less bitter than in another beer because of the amount of sugars available, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know about that, but I agree with you that none of these are particularly bitter beers, and even the 60-minute edition doesn't stand close to what I would consider to be a bitter beer.
And I don't know if I said or not, but there were slight differences between these on the starting and final gravities. The 60 was started at 10:55, ended at 10:13. The 30 was 30 and flameout were both 10:57 and 10:15. So just a couple of gravity points, which I think that's negligible.
Yeah,
I don't think it's enough to. I mean, we certainly didn't. They didn't taste. One didn't taste more alcoholic or whatever than the others, or one didn't have a significant body over the others.
Could we expect these numbers and our taste perceptions to be the same if these were scaled up into normal batch sizes, whether it's your home brewer at 5 gallons or a small brewery at 5 barrels? I mean, could we expect these flavors to be consistent?
Let's ask the professional brewer.
I think, at least on the bittering side of things, I've been able to scale up and use similar formulas and get pretty consistent results. And on the dry hopping side of things, it's harder to say because, like we were kind of talking earlier, on the homebrewing scale with doing an immersion chiller and like my flameout edition, I was getting really great hop aromatics, and I didn't need to dry hop very much. I was getting like down to pitching temperature in 20-25 minutes. And on the commercial scale, where it's 15-minute whirlpool, letting it settle, and then that sort of slow 45-minute process of getting it through the heat exchanger, my flameout editions aren't giving nearly the same aromatic impact, and I'm having to dry hop extensively. Anything I want, a nice big hop nose on. So that feels like it's harder to say how well it scales. Sure. But on the bittering side of things, yeah, I feel like it's been similar.
Now here's a question that, and I want to start playing. We've got 2 more bottles of each that I want to start playing with. But one of the questions I wanted to address was something that we talked about when I interviewed you at West Mountain, Casey. Is the 30-minute edition? What does it really add to the beer, and is it really necessary? So, I mean, are there any conclusions or opinions that we can start forming as a result of this little tasting? I mean, did the 30-minute edition bring anything to the beer that the 60-minute or the flameout edition didn't?
I'm going to say that it did, in that each beer was different. So each beer did have a slightly different flavor profile. So there is a difference. And the way that I would approach the analogy I would use would be if you're cooking and you're making a complicated, let's say like a really complicated red wine sauce for meat. So a marchand de vin sauce, which is a French, very fancy sauce. And you continue to add these layers of flavor that any one of the layers isn't going to dramatically change it, and it takes a long time to make this sauce. And so you're continually fussing with it, and you're adding little bits of flavor, and then cooking it down, so that it concentrates, and you continue to massage it, kind of. All of those steps are important, and they all contribute. It doesn't mean you can't make a good sauce a lot quicker and more simply, but there is a depth of flavor and a depth of richness that you can only get by doing that. So I would argue that from that context, that the 30-minute edition does bring something to the party.
I feel like, as far as these three beers specifically right here, if we're like when the mic goes off and we start to just like having a beer, the 30-minute one is the one that I would say, ooh, that's the one. I mean, it's the one that has the most balance. So definitely the 30 minutes are like contributing some bitterness and some aromatics. I feel like there is possibly like a couple of different contexts where that 30-minute addition makes sense, and then some where it doesn't. Thinking about the places that I know sort of traditionally do a little bit more mid-boil hop additions, thinking like some of the like somewhat hoppy German kinds of like pilsners, that they would do some late addition, but not necessarily like right at the end, and that there's that sort of elegant hoppy profile, but that's very gentle and integrated. And I think in that case, maybe that's important. Maybe you're sort of like in that, like making that elegant sauce where you're sort of like building this gentle profile. Whereas I kind of think in the context of American IPA, where it's all like, it's like just maximum impact, that possibly those mid-boil hops are more or less wasted, and that your senses are overwhelmed with all the everything else that's going on, and those mid notes are lost.
Well, let's play a little bit. Why don't we? I'm going to empty this cup right here. How do we want to do this? So why don't we get a little bit of the 60.
Okay.
And you want to open that, Steve? Sure. Do too much here.
Back up.
Okay. Why don't we get a little bit of the 60, and then leave some room in the cup there. See, now that's got a nice, it's got a nice head on there.
This is just my dumping my dregs together, which had relatively equal amounts, even though they've been sitting out here now for 20 minutes or so. Even just the dregs dumped together is an improvement. Like,
oh, there you go.
They have contributed good things to each other.
Okay, so let's taste the 60 alone. Oh, that's a tasty beer.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's add a splash of see if you can add an equal amount of the flameout.
Do you want soups on or just a few grams?
I don't know what that means.
Which one is which?
This one is.
Okay.
So add a
2 glugs. I don't know what I'm doing here. 2 glugs. This is highly unscientific. 2 glugs. And I put actually very little comparatively. There's much less of the flame out, so we may have to adjust. Here's the adjustment beer.
Okay. Yeah, keep those. I'm going to set the flame out lid on top of so we can keep these.
It's a dramatic improvement over the 60 by itself. And I think, like, in surprising ways too, because it's not just the aromatics. Like my like main, even in thinking about like the 60 as like, okay, well, I'm having malt and then just bitterness in the finish. Like my critique of that beer would have been it's too sweet, and like weirdly, like kind of to me a little bit unexpectedly, this Flame Out edition makes this beer not too sweet. Now it feels like it's crisp.
That's interesting. Steve?
Same. I mean, I agree. It's much better. The flavor is better balanced. The beer is a little crisper. It's good.
All right. Now we have the neglected, much aligned 30-minute top edition.
Also known as the Irish Red-Headed Stepchild.
No offense to all the Irish red-headed stepchilds, children out there, childs. And now I've sampled quite a bit, so just a little splash in mine.
Okay.
And we to be scientific, we should have a graduated cylinder out here. And that's darn tasty.
It's better again. now it just feels more rounded. Like there is, like it's more rounded.
Yeah, it is. It's the best of what we've had so far. So that makes the argument for all three editions, at least with this recipe.
I get a nice bit of bitterness. It's malty enough. I'm getting some hop flavor in there. I don't know if I'm getting a lot of aroma, but I'm definitely getting, hop flavor. I might add, this is the flameout? I think I'm going to add a little bit more of the flameout in there to see if that increases the hop flavor. And I'm wondering if this could be a weird and very labor-intensive way to formulate recipes.
Well, I would argue that it's not so much about formulating a specific recipe. It's about learning what ingredients do and don't do with your beers. And so that, to really become a fully actualized brewer, especially at the homebrew level, I think, tasting everything and tasting it in this case, it's kind of purest or rawest form, and then going back and starting to blend things together allows you to have a reference point for your own palate, so that when you make a recipe, again, as a home brewer, that you kind of know where you're coming at and where you're coming from with it, and you can begin to kind of pre-taste it in your mind. I have a sense of what that's going to taste like before I ever brew it, and you can only do that by playing with it and tasting it.
And isn't that like the most amazing argument for homebrewing? Like this is such a cool thing. Like I like how many pro brewers have been able to do something like this when they're working on their big system, and how many people who have tasted thousands of beers on Untapped have had a chance to do this and sort of like take apart the components and then like actually have them make sense in their heads. This is fun.
Yeah, and I know that I've talked about doing this in the past before, but I don't think I ever have, and I don't think we've had a show on this. I don't think we've ever brought anybody in that has done this. And I'm not trying to say that I'm. What I'm trying to say is I don't think that this has been done, and I've learned about it, and I've forgotten about it, and I've rediscovered it. So, those who are going through the archives and know the show better than I do, please let me know if this is if this is ground that we've been over before. But I like this, with a little. In fact, I think I need a little bit more bitterness. So is that the 60? Mm-hmm. Give me a little bit more of the 60, and. I drink that beer all day. That's a pretty good little pale ale, nice and clean, and it's simple, but very satisfying. It's a little 1 gallon, 1 gallon batches. So I think that, and I think Casey, I think that you've got a really good point that. What the 30-minute boil brings, or 30-minute addition brings to the beer, is going to be different for each style of beer. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. Every beer's got to have it. And for a giant, really bitter, really fruity IPA, American IPA, the 30-minute edition may be a waste of hops. It may be lost in all of that. But if you're doing something more subtle like this, there is a dimension that the 30-minute hop edition does bring to the beer. It certainly adds bitterness. It may not be as bitter as the 60-minute edition, but it also brings some flavor to the party as well. So that all of the flavor is not boiled off in 30 minutes. There's still some hop flavor. I mean, did you think so?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. And another thing that I do when I'm doing a recipe, so if I'm starting off with and of course I'm at a homebrewer scale, so 3-gallon batch, a 5-gallon batch, and I'm starting off with something like Apollo hops, which are high alpha acid hops, but I really want that Apollo hop. So I'm trying to think, how can I get to the level of hops, the IBUs that I want? So let's just say that I want the beer to end up at about 50, for no particular reason. So if I throw in that whole ounce or 2 ounces at 60 minutes, I've way overshot it. Well, as a home brewer, I've opened up my 1 ounce pack, and maybe I want to use that whole 1 ounce pack. So I can start to move those hops around in the additions and adjust the IBUs. It's more economical for me. And now, when I formulate a recipe, it's more economical for my customer. I can say, well, let's get your bitterness in with this, and then let's move another half ounce of that to 30 minutes, and let's come back at flameout or 5 minutes and pick up those aromas. And so it's an easy way to move those IBUs around and leave you with a nicely balanced beer.
That's a good point. Yeah, because how often have you cut the package, that nitrogen flushed package of 1 ounce package of hops, and have folded it over, used half an ounce of it and folded it over and put it in the fridge and come back and used it later. With me, it's like 4 months later, I look in there, oh yeah, those, but the nitrogen's gone, they're probably oxidized, they're not any good. Right. So here lately, I've been formulating recipes to use full ounces of hops. Because it's, number one, it's easier, but then also you're not wasting anything, and there's a lot of you can tailor your, like, for instance, on the 60-minute edition, it didn't taste cascadey. Right. We just tasted bitterness. Right. So you could make an argument that you could use any hop that would, and pick the alpha acid level that fits your recipe, and add it at the 60-minute mark. So yeah.
Another kind of variation of this moving bitterness around in the boil is if you struggle to get sort of a full brew day in and you're looking for ways to shorten your brew day a bit, you can just, like, instead of doing a 60-minute edition, you can just do a 30-minute as far as make it a 30-minute boil. You accomplish everything you need to do in 30 minutes, I would say. So, that's probably another show. But that's like, lately it's been difficult finding time to actually homebrew, and so that's one of the things that I've been doing is a little shorter mashes, a little shorter boils, and in total cut sort of an hour or two off the brew day, and that means I can actually do it instead of like just wishing I could make a batch of homebrew. So,
well, that's the whole point behind your 15-minute pale ale.
Yeah. And Marshall from Brewlosophy has been doing his quick and dirty recipes where he mashes for 30 minutes and boils for 30 minutes, and then he, after fermentation, he crashes with the gelatin or fines with gelatin, and it's a whole thing. Look it up.
I'm afraid what will happen if I search for quick and dirty on there.
But yeah, don't just search for quick and dirty.
Well, that's my law firm.
Quick and dirty.
Quick and dirty.
Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I did. I was demonstrating for some friends brewing, all grain brewing, and I did a 1 gallon batch, and I did his quick and dirty method, and only mashed for 30 minutes and only boiled for 30 minutes, and it came out to be a really tasty pale ale. So yeah, so there are a lot of things that you can do to cut down your process and come out with tasty beers. Well, what else on the subject of is there anything else? Have we beaten this? I'm really happy. I think we have a result, and it's up to interpretation. You know what people take away from it, but I think that this has been a fun thing, and I think there's some results here.
Yeah, smooth. I'd add smooth. I think that it was just very interesting to me to see how difficult it was to pull apart. Although we all three got it, but it was harder than I thought it would be, and that it was very revealing when we mixed the three back together, how much better the sum of the parts were.
This was fun.
Good summary, Steve. I've got a dog on my lap now.
I'll get down.
All right, guys. Well, thanks. This has been fun. Now I have more other samples, homebrew samples from my archive that I've been wanting Casey to taste. So
Yay.
We'll leave it here. And the woodpecker says bye.
And on that note.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, James.
Well, thanks again to Steve and Casey. I took a set of bottles to Tulsa when I went to High Gravity's grand opening, and I did a blind tasting with Desiree and Dave, David Thompson and Jared Major, and Gene Collins. Well, Desiree and Dave were able to correctly identify the three samples. Everybody was surprised at how close they actually tasted. So, out of the 8 people who have tasted the 3 samples, 5 have correctly identified them. I don't know how scientific that is, but I might take the remaining bottles to Minneapolis to see if anybody else wants to play along. I got a couple of sets left. We'll be back in July with lots of great stuff. Until then, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcast. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirt in the store as well. You can find our log books where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all those out at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Pixie Sticks, bulk 2-pound bag. I used to love Pixie Sticks. And Earth Tower Vertical Garden, 4-sided wooden planter on wheels. That's pretty cool. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.